Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, December 11, 2025. The Senate fails to advance both Democratic and Republican health care bills that the sponsors say would address expected increases in costs for millions of Americans under the Affordable Care Act at the end of the month when enhanced insurance premium tax credits are set to expire. Both bills receiving a majority vote, but not the 60-vote supermajority required. House passes a bill to reverse President Donald Trump's executive order limiting the collective bargaining rights of around 1 million federal workers in national security departments and agencies. Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, cancels a meeting to unveil major changes in how that agency responds to natural disasters. We'll talk about it with the Hill's energy and environment reporter, Rachel Frazin. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem testifies before the House Homeland Security Committee, and most of the questions from members are about the Trump administration's immigration enforcement campaign. And the Indiana State Senate, controlled by Republicans, votes down a congressional redistricting map drawn by the Republicans designed to get that party 2 more U.S. House seats. And this comes after President Trump demanded that the new map pass. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt asked about the Venezuelan oil tanker seized by the United States. CBS News writes the Senate on Thursday failed to advance competing Democratic and Republican measures to address health care costs as senators remain divided mostly along party lines ahead of significant price hikes for millions of Americans in the new year. Democrats have been seeking an extension of enhanced tax credits under the Affordable Care Act, which was their main demand during the government shutdown earlier in the fall. Republicans offered their own plan, which would send funds directly to consumers instead of extending the current subsidies. The vote on advancing the GOP bill was 51-48, with one Republican crossing the aisle to oppose it. And the final tally on the Democratic bill was also 51-48, with 4 Republicans joining Democrats to support an extension. That's reporting from CBS News. In both cases, the votes falling short of the 60 votes needed. And Senate leaders spoke on the Senate floor about the competing versions before the votes. We start with the Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, on the Democratic proposal.
Today is D-Day, Decision Day for Republican senators. Will Republicans side today with the American people and avert the impending health care crisis, or will they abandon American families as premiums shoot through the roof on January 1st? That is the decision Senate Republicans must make today. I say to my Republican colleagues, our bill is the last train to leave the station. After wasting precious time fighting among themselves, Republicans have one last shot at a clean, realistic plan to lower health care premiums. The Democratic bill is the only bill that will do that today. Ours is the only bill on either side in the House and Senate that has the full support of every member on our side of the aisle. Democrats are fighting to lower health care costs for the American people, while Republicans are fighting among themselves. By my last count, Republicans are now at 9 different health care proposals and counting, and none of them give the American people the one thing they most want: a clean, simple extension of these health care tax credits. But our bill does extend these credits cleanly and simply, and it's time for Republicans to join us. So I repeat, our bill is the last train to leave the station. After this, we'll not have time to try again before premiums shoot through the roof next year. This is not a political fight. This is not a symbolic vote. This is a life and death vote, because people who will lose their health care could face that horrible, horrible end.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on the Senate floor. He also had something to say about the Republican health care bill.
Under the Republican plan, the big idea is essentially to hand people about $80 a month and wish them good luck. And even to qualify for that check, listen to how bad this is. Americans would be forced onto bare-bone bronze plans with sky-high deductibles, $7,000 or $10,000 for an individual, tens of thousands for a couple. So to get that $80 a month, you're going to pay $7,000 off the top before you even get any health insurance. How ridiculous, how stingy, and how mean and cruel to the American people. What Republicans offer is not a health care plan. The Republican plan is a when you get sick, you go broke plan.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, on the Senate floor. The Senate Republicans also spoke about the two health care bills that were voted on today, one offered by the Democrats, one offered by the Republicans. First here is the Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, talking about the Democratic plan.
Later today, we will vote on the Democrats' partisan messaging bill, which is a clean 3-year extension of the Biden COVID bonuses. And when I say clean, I mean all that I mean by that is no reforms, straight up extension, 3 years of a program without any reforms, any revisions, any changes that would actually help drive down healthcare costs instead of increasing healthcare costs and get rid of the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse in this program. The Democrats' plan that the Democrat leader called it on the floor the other day, it's their plan. Apparently, they think that a 3-year extension with no reforms to try and disguise the real impact of Obamacare's spiraling costs is actually a plan. I don't know how you can call it a plan. I came down here yesterday, Mr. President, to talk at length about some of the many problems with Obamacare and the perverse incentives it provides to move employees off of employer-provided insurance and into taxpayer-subsidized plans that have rampant year-over-year increases in premiums. The perverse incentives that it provides to insurance companies to enroll Americans, some of whom don't even know that they've been enrolled, so that the insurance companies can rake in even more subsidies. And then this so-called plan is rampant, and I say rampant, with fraud and abuse. Mr. President, a Government Accountability Office report released just last week found a whole host of problems, including the successful enrollment of fake individuals, Social Security number fraud, failure to verify or sometimes even request documentation, improper payment of subsidies, and the list goes on.
The Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, on the Senate floor. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, a co-sponsor of the Republican health care bill that came up for a vote today, spoke about that, defending it against the Democratic alternative.
President, what we're debating here are two visions of the future of the Obamacare exchange. Democrats want to cover the cost of health insurance to benefit health insurance companies, and Republicans want to cover the cost of health insurance to benefit patients. Now, I can actually kind of develop that idea. If you look at what Democrats want to do, they want to give 100% of the money to the insurance companies, and the insurance company, by law under Obamacare, can take 20% of it for overhead and profit. 80% of it goes to patient care, but of course, you've got to get your prior authorization and permission for this 80% to be spent upon you. On the other hand, the Republican plan is to put the money into the patient's pocketbook so that she has money to pay for the insurance out of pocket. And here, 100% of the money she receives goes towards some sort of health care or dental care or vision care. By the way, that's a distinction. Under the Democratic plan, the insurance company doesn't cover your dental work. They don't cover the orthodontia for your child. They don't cover the eyeglasses you need. And under what we're doing, putting it into her pocketbook, physician, dentist, drugs, vision care, this is a patient-driven account of which 100% is going to the care she knows she needs, and she does not need to seek permission in order to obtain.
Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, also a physician, speaking on the Senate floor. The Senate went on to defeat both the Republican and Democratic proposals for health care reform. Both got votes of 51 to 48, short of the 60 votes needed. For the Democratic bill, that's a 3-year extension of the expiring enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies. 4 Republican senators voted yes with the Democrats: Susan Collins of Maine, Josh Hawley of Missouri, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Dan Sullivan of Alaska. For the Republican bill, putting money into those health savings accounts for some people on ACA plans, 1 Republican voted no with the Democrats, Rand Paul of Kentucky. At the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked at her news conference about what the president will do now on health care.
It now seems all but certain that the Obamacare subsidies will expire at the end of the year. It means more than 20 million Americans are now bracing for their health care costs to soar. Is the president prepared to let this happen, or is he going to step in?
The president is prepared to take action on health care, and he wants Republicans on the Hill to do the same. As you have seen, Senate Republicans put forth their own legislation earlier this week. As for the subsidies that are set to expire, I would like to remind you and everybody at home why this is on the brink of happening. Democrats wrote Obamacare. They passed it without a single Republican vote, and then they ballooned it with these expensive COVID subsidies that completely distorted the health insurance market. And then they doubled down, extending those subsidies and setting their own expiration date right now in 2025, which the administration is obviously well aware of, and we are working. The president is working with his healthcare policy team here at the White House, as well as Republicans on Capitol Hill, to find a solution.
You said he's working to find a solution. He wants to see a solution to lower health care costs.
He does.
But these subsidies are expiring at the end of the year. So what is the plan, and what is he going to do to put this in place in the next 2-3 weeks?
You'll hear more from the president and from the White House on that very soon. As for wanting a solution to lower healthcare costs, I'm glad you said it, because the president is doing just that. He has made unprecedented progress towards lowering healthcare costs in this country and drug prices. He's secured numerous most favored nation drug price deals, with many more to come. As you know, the One Big Beautiful Bill, the working family tax cut, significantly expanded access to health savings accounts for those on Obamacare. Again, a Democrat written program and approved program, which has led to higher healthcare costs in this country. So it goes back to the issue of affordability. Democrats are now pretending they want a solution to this issue, but they created the problem. The president and Republicans are currently coming up with creative solutions and ideas to lower healthcare costs for the American people, and you'll continue to hear more from them on that.
Before these subsidies expire?
I just said you're going to continue to hear more from the president and Republicans on this issue, I'm sure.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt answering reporters' questions in the White House briefing room. NBC News writing that House Republican leaders have said they hope to hold a vote on a health care bill next week before leaving for the holiday recess, but the party has not yet found a plan that its members will rally around, much less one that can pass the Senate before the end of the year. No vote has been scheduled yet, and some swing district Republicans have signed on to 2 discharge petitions to defy Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, and force a vote on extending ACA money. That was from NBC News. This is Washington Today. The House today passed a bill to overturn President Donald Trump's executive order removing union collective bargaining rights for about 1 million federal workers involved in national security work. The bill came to the House floor over the objections of the Republican leadership through a discharge petition. 5 House Republicans joining all Democrats in signing it to achieve the majority needed, 218 of the House members, to force that vote. Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania was one of those 5 House Republicans, and he spoke today on the House floor before the vote on the bill.
This legislation reaffirms a core principle. A government that serves the people must also respect the rights of those who serve within it. Federal employees work tirelessly every day, often behind the scenes. They process Social Security benefits, safeguard our food, safeguard our water, care for our veterans, and respond whenever a disaster strikes. Their work is essential, and its impact reaches every community across this nation. Mr. Speaker, by restoring their collective bargaining rights, we strengthen a system that keeps government effective, stable, and responsive, all without compromising security or mission readiness. Reinstating these rights is not a concession, it is a commitment to treat federal workers with dignity, to reinforce a resilient public service, and to honor the commitment of the men and women who show up for the American people every single day.
Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, Republican of Pennsylvania, on the House floor. Congressman Michael Cloud, Republican of Texas, spoke against the bill.
The proposed legislation is designed to nullify President Trump's lawful executive order to exclude agencies within the national security missions from collective bargaining agreements. Article 2 of the Constitution is crystal clear. The executive power is invested in the President of the United States. Let me repeat, all authority in the executive branch flows from the people to the duly elected executive. Anyone operating outside of the pleasure of the President in the executive branch is simply part of an unconstitutional fourth branch of government. The President holds the sole authority. Yet for decades, federal collective bargaining agreements have been allowed, and some even designed to restrict the President's ability to lead the government we elected him to run. That's why President Trump, acting fully within the authority granted by the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978, amended Jimmy Carter's 1979 executive order to exempt additional agencies from burdensome collective bargaining agreements. Agencies such as the Department of Defense, State, Justice, Homeland Security, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, as well as many others. The less disdain for the Constitution cannot be more clear. We saw this during Trump administration 1 with the resistance movement. During the Biden administration, we saw the auto pen controversy, where they even went around the executive. The Biden administration spent the final months, even after being voted out of office, frantically signing union contracts which were explicitly designed to sabotage the incoming administration and prevent the president elected by the people from carrying out the mandate he was given. These same government unions are not neutral public servants. In the 2023 to 2024 election cycle, the 4 largest federal employee unions spent nearly $1 billion on politics. 98.8% of their federal contributions went to the Democratic Party.
Congressman Michael Cloud, Republican from Texas, on the House floor. The House went on to pass this legislation repealing President Trump's executive order, stripping union rights for certain federal workers by banning collective bargaining for federal employees involved in national security work by a vote of 231 to 195, 20 Republicans voting yes, with all Democrats. Story from Notice. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem left a House hearing on worldwide threats early on Thursday to attend a meeting about the future of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, drawing the ire of Democrats in the hearing room who were grilling her on President Donald Trump's immigration agenda. The FEMA Review Council meeting was then abruptly canceled minutes before it was set to begin. FEMA referred with questions about the meeting's cancellation to the White House. That's the article from Notice. And coming up in a moment, we will talk with a reporter about the meeting and reforms might have been proposed. But first, Secretary Noem at that House Homeland Security Committee hearing moments before she left was talking about FEMA.
FEMA today is deploying resources 2 times faster on average than in history, which means the dollars are going out twice as fast than they ever have before. And the president, as soon as these disasters are happening, is deploying those resources to Republican and Democrat states. New Mexico, Texas, Alaska, they're all getting dollars immediately, and we're responding immediately to our people. I have to actually leave this hearing early because the FEMA Review Council is giving their report today on suggestions for changes to FEMA.
Thank you for not taking your foot off the gas on that.
I have to co-chair it, but I will be leaving soon to have to go do that. But those suggestions are Republicans and Democrats coming forward with how FEMA should go forward in the future based on the president's vision for making sure that states get the chance to manage it and that local emergency managers get the chance to go and help their communities in a much more efficient way.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem at a House Homeland Security Committee hearing. She left early to chair a FEMA Review Council that was to vote on FEMA reforms, but the meeting was canceled. Joining us now with more on this is Rachel Frazin, the Hill's Energy and Environment reporter. Thanks for being with us. In your article, you called it a highly anticipated meeting. Do we know why it was canceled?
Thank you for having me. It is not clear why it was canceled. The Department of Homeland Security is referring all questions to the White House, and they have not spoken about this. They didn't respond to my request for comment. There's been a few different explanations and a few different reports emerging. The Washington Post reported that it was canceled by the White House, and, a source told them that it's because the report's recommendations were not specific or concrete enough. On the other hand, you have E&E News reporting that the cancellation came amid anger over CNN reporting on the contents of the report prior to its anticipated release.
On that note, what did CNN say? What did we think that they were going to propose?
So CNN says they've obtained a copy of this report, and the proposals in it include things like cutting FEMA staffers, raising the threshold or the bar for states to qualify for federal assistance after a disaster, rebranding and changing the agency's name. But broadly, their report says that while FEMA is not suggested to be eliminated, this report envisions it sort of largely scaled back in its authority, especially as compared to the states in responding to disasters.
Who is on the FEMA Review Council?
It's made up of a broad array of federal, state, and local officials. It's led by Kristi Noem, as well as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And then you've got, a couple of governors, Glenn Youngkin and Abbott in Texas, and then some local officials as well from states like Florida, as well as, former officials from states like Mississippi or Louisiana. So you've got sort of a wide array, and it's mostly Republicans, but not entirely. The Democratic mayor of Tampa, for example, is on it.
These proposed FEMA reforms have been floated, talked about now since the second term of the Trump presidency began. What kind of feedback has he gotten, especially from Republican governors?
So I think that Republican governors have, like Democratic governors, generally not been thrilled with proposals to cut assistance to the states. It seems like that is what they would like to do, is they would like to have states cover more of these costs. But a lot of the states that are hardest hit by disasters are Republican-led states. You had major hurricanes in recent years in states like Florida, in North Carolina. Obviously, you've had Hurricane Katrina all those years back hit Louisiana. Texas has seen some really, really devastating hurricanes. And so I think that a lot of times those Republican states can also be wary of cuts to federal assistance.
We're talking with The Hill's reporter Rachel Frazin. How has FEMA responded so far to natural disasters in this first year of the second term of the Trump presidency, and how has it changed? And I guess maybe did Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, have any effect on it?
I'm not sure about DOGE in particular, but it does seem like there has been an effort to raise that bar and scale back FEMA's role. In fact, they ended up, firing officials who said that FEMA shouldn't be eliminated. And we saw actually a lot of criticism of its response to major flooding in Texas, where a lot of people died. There were reports and rumors that the then acting leader of FEMA couldn't be reached. It was over the July 4th weekend, so I think a lot of officials may have been on vacation. But, they have still been sending search and rescue crews and stuff like that when we've had disasters. The other interesting piece of the puzzle here is that amid all these calls to scale back FEMA, this fall we did not have a major hurricane hit the United States. And so I think that has taken some of the pressure off here, because we haven't seen, not to say that other storms we've seen haven't been devastating. Obviously, those floods in Texas, for example, over the summer were really, really devastating and were a major test of this philosophy. We also did not get as many storms as we have, as many hurricanes as we have in past years.
And a final question. FEMA has never been a very large agency with a huge budget, but it plays an outsized role in the political perception about how government responds to Americans in need. Explain that dynamic.
Well, I think FEMA is one of the nation's most visible agencies. If you have experienced a disaster, you may see FEMA officials or people wearing FEMA vests, walking through your neighborhoods. When there is a disaster, a lot of times the heads of agencies like FEMA and of the Department of Homeland Security are going to be the people you're seeing on your television, telling you what to do, what not to do, giving survival tips and saving lives. And so I think because of its life-saving mission, especially as it comes to responding to disasters, it is one that's in the spotlight, and that a lot of Americans pay very close attention to, again, especially in some of those disaster-prone states.
Rachel Frazin, energy and environment reporter with The Hill. Find her stories at thehill.com and on X at Rachel Frazin. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is Washington Today. And returning to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's testimony, New York Times writing that Kristi Noem drew sharp questions from Democratic lawmakers on Thursday about the Trump administration's aggressive immigration enforcement tactics, with some members calling on her to resign. The hearing held by the House Homeland Security Committee typically takes place annually and focuses on worldwide threats to the United States. But most of the focus on Thursday was on the Trump administration's escalating immigration efforts and instances in which immigrants with no criminal records and U.S. citizens have been caught up in enforcement actions. That's from the New York Times article. Here's an exchange between Secretary Noem and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia.
Can you discuss further what you're facing in these sanctuary cities and the illegal alien monsters that have been released into American communities under the Biden administration?
Yeah, unfortunately, Congresswoman, we arrest individuals like that every day because they're so prevalent on our streets because of what happened under the Biden administration. Every day we're able to go out and encounter and bring to justice individuals who are raping our children, murdering our mothers, our grandmothers, our families are devastated by them. And I'm shocked at the Democrats' constant defense of these individual criminals over the American citizen that is out there just trying to live their lives, put food on the table, and live the American dream. And what we do at the Department of Homeland Security by making sure that we're out enforcing the law every day is making sure that those families get a chance to do that. So I'm so grateful for them. The 8,000% increase in death threats is real. These ICE agents and CBP officers that are out on our streets doing God's work live in these communities. They live there. These are their families and their neighbors that they're protecting, and they get up every day and do that job because they believe in their mission. They take an oath, and they are honorable men and women who are serving with greatness during a challenging time when activists and radicals attack them and put their lives in danger. I think it's shameful to see the defense of individuals who break our laws. We are a nation of laws. If we are not a nation of laws, we're no nation at all. And that is what we are doing every day, is following those. If you guys don't like the law, go change it. That's your job. You don't complain. I was raised by a dad who said we don't complain about things. We fix them. Well, go fix them. If you don't like the law, quit bellyaching, quit hitting and attacking our ICE officers, quit going out and protesting and screaming vile things at them, quit calling them names. We wouldn't let our children do that. Go do something that actually matters by having an honest debate and changing the law. That's your jobs. You all should be fired, in my viewpoint.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem before the House Homeland Security Committee, being questioned by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia. Also at this hearing, Congressman Seth Magaziner, Democrat from Rhode Island, asked about immigration enforcement.
Madam Secretary, how many United States military veterans have you deported?
Sir, we have not deported U.S. citizens or military veterans.
I don't believe you served in the military. I haven't either, but I think you and I can agree that as Americans, we owe everything to those who have served our country in uniform, particularly those who have served in combat. Do you agree with that?
Sir, I believe that people that are in this United States that are citizens have legal status here.
Madam Secretary, we are joined on Zoom by a gentleman named Se-Jun Park. He is a United States Army combat veteran who was shot twice while serving our country in Panama in 1989. Like many veterans, he struggled with PTSD and substance abuse after his service. He was arrested in the 1990s for some minor drug offenses, nothing serious. He never hurt anyone besides himself, and he's been clean and sober for 14 years. He is a combat veteran, a Purple Heart recipient. He has sacrificed more for this country than most people ever have. Earlier this year, you deported him to Korea, a country he hasn't lived in since he was 7 years old. Will you join me in thanking Mr. Park for his service to our country?
Sir, I'm grateful for every single person that has served our country and follows our laws.
Can you please tell Mr. Park why you deported him?
Every one of them needs to be enforced.
But you understand that many veterans struggle with PTSD, many veterans struggle with substance abuse challenges. This man took 2 bullets for our country. You have broad authority, by the way, as Secretary, to issue humanitarian parole, to do deferred action. will you commit to at least looking at Mr. Park's case to see if you can help him find a pathway back to this country that he sacrificed so much for?
I will absolutely look at his case, but I want you to remember that
Madam
our
Secretary, the
programs
man
need to have
behind you,
integrity
please
as well.
stand up, sir. His name is Jim Brown from Troy, Missouri. He is a Navy combat veteran who served our country in the Gulf War. He's married to a woman named Donna, who came to our country legally from Ireland when she was 11 years old. She has lived here for 48 years. Because of you, Jim's wife, Donna, has been in prison for the last 4 months. She did not come here illegally, and she has never committed any crime other than writing 2 bad checks totaling $80 10 years ago. She is currently in prison and facing deportation. Ms. Noem, will you thank Mr. Brown for his service to our country?
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your service to our country.
Now, what possible explanation can there be for locking up his wife for 4 months when she has committed no crime other than writing a couple of bad checks for $80?
Sir, it is not my prerogative, my latitude, or my job to pick and choose which laws in this country get enforced.
You have broad discretion as the secretary. You can issue parole, you can do all kinds of things, but you're choosing not to. Will you commit again to just reviewing Donna's case and reuniting this combat veteran with his beloved wife, who also loves this country?
I will review the case.
Now, Madam Secretary, you've already heard the story of Lance Corporal Alejandro Barranco, the United States Marine veteran who is behind you, who also has 2 brothers who are United States Marines. Will you thank Lance Corporal Barranco for his service?
Thank you for your service.
His father, Narcisco Barranco, is a landscaper in California who has lived peacefully in our country for 30 years and has no criminal record. Last spring, while he was mowing the lawn at an IHOP, ICE agents tackled him in the street and imprisoned him for weeks. A peaceful, hard-working man who raised 3 sons to be United States Marines. We need men of that character in this country. Again, as Secretary, you have broad discretion. Will you consider Lance Corporal Barranco's father for parole in place to stay in our country, owing to the fact that he has contributed to our country by raising 3 United States Marines?
This is an opportunity to remind everybody that every person that's in this country illegally has an opportunity to voluntarily go home and come back the right way.
He raised 3 United States Marines.
We will facilitate that.
He has been living here peacefully, doing his job for 30 years. You have discretion. You are choosing not to use it. Madam Secretary, you promised America that you would go after the worst of the worst. But these people are not the worst of the worst. A Purple Heart recipient, a military spouse, the father of 3 Marines. And it's not just veterans and military families. You are locking up and deporting children with cancer, mothers with babies in the NICU, United States citizens. There are many problems with your leadership, but the biggest problem is this. You don't seem to know how to tell the difference between the good guys and the bad guys. Go after the bad guys. Go after the terrorists. Do not go after veterans, Marines, children,
Gentleman's
United States
expired.
citizens. I yield back.
Congressman Seth Magaziner, Democrat from Rhode Island, questioning Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem at today's House Homeland Security Committee hearing. You can find the video of the hearing in its entirety at our video library at cspan.org. Associated Press writing that Kilmar Rego Garcia has been released from an immigration detention center in Pennsylvania following an order from a federal judge issued Thursday. According to his attorney's office, Rego Garcia's attorney confirmed he was released just before 5 p.m. Thursday and told the AP he plans to return to Maryland, where he has an American wife and child and where he has lived for years after originally immigrating to the U.S. illegally as a teenager. Attorney Simon Sandoval Moschenberg said he's not sure what comes next, but he's prepared to defend his client against further deportation efforts. Reporting from AP. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea, it's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. Indianapolis Star writing in a monumental rebuke of President Donald Trump's wishes, Indiana's supermajority Republican state legislature became the first to formally reject his push for mid-decade redistricting. The Senate's 19-31 vote caps months of anticipation and pressure from the White House and its allies, placing Indiana at the center of national intrigue and ire. Even the bill's sponsor signaled minutes before the vote that he didn't know which way the vote would go. That was from IndyStar.com. Here's some of the debate before the vote. Indiana State Senator Michael Young, a Republican, spoke in favor of the new map.
I don't want to wake up the morning after the election in November and find out we lost the House of Representatives by 1 vote. If I knew that I did that, I would feel horrible. The Speaker said, and we all know this, that our technology and the ability to draw districts are so good, we can make any district impenetrable if we choose to do it. The Speaker said, based on what we have today, their political people tell them it's likely on election day that they will either be down 1 seat in the minority or up 1 seat. If Indiana comes along, they would be up 1 seat or up 3 seats. I don't know. I can't see the future. I'm not that great. Maybe his assessment's wrong. But I do know the technology exists because I drew the maps in 2011 with a couple other of my friends. I know how good they are. I know what we can do. I know how strong we can make a district. Only a handful of districts throughout the United States will determine who controls Congress. And we may or may not do our part today to keep our nation in the hands of Republicans and to do the right things for our state.
Indiana State Senator Michael Young, a Republican, speaking on the Senate floor in Indianapolis before the vote. Speaking against this new map, Senator J.D. Ford, a Democrat.
We have heard over and over again that if other states are doing it, if other states are exploiting the rules, then we should too. That is not what I believe in. I believe in a process that is rooted in fairness and a reverence of our values and our rules. I also believe in the rural, urban, Democrat, and Republican Hoosiers, not paid actors, who took off work, found last-minute childcare, or used their day off to stand in line for hours to testify on this bill in committee this week. The majority of those using their voice to say no, exercising their First Amendment constitutional right. I believe in the thousands of calls, emails, and comments I have heard from Hoosiers over the last 4 months, overwhelmingly saying, please do not do this. And like so many of you, I believe in the power and importance of merit, and I trust the people of our state. And I know in my heart that those two things should be the driving determinant in who wins an election. This bill creates a different, dire outlook for our state. Instead of merit, we are saying that we are prioritizing a letter next to a name on a ballot with predetermined election results predicated on party affiliation, creating a surgical map with elected officials choosing their constituents and not the other way around. And we should demand more for Hoosiers who so desperately need strong representation in Washington that accurately reflects their communities.
Indiana State Senator J.D. Ford, a Democrat, on the Senate floor in Indianapolis before today's vote not to approve the new congressional district map as written by the Republicans that had the aim of changing the U.S. House breakdown of the congressional delegation to Indiana from 7 Republicans and 2 Democrats to 9 Republicans. And the state Senate vote was 19 yes, 31 no. This morning, C-SPAN spoke with Kayla Dwyer, Indy Star State House reporter, about why the Republicans might be voting no.
President Trump carried the state by 19 points. The Senate is controlled by Republicans. Why would Republicans vote against this?
Among the people here who are opposed to it, it's really about the institution. We're a state that really prides itself on having a lot of stability in the way we do things in our legislature, and also prides itself with being a little bit, independent of Washington, D.C. So it's really, even though, yes, people here love Trump, like we are a Trump supporting state. We are not necessarily a do what DC tells us state always. And that's been a big source of the resistance. A prominent Republican senator who's been in there for a long time actually gave a tearful speech about this 2 days ago at the committee level, where he basically said, I fear for this institution. People are going to completely lose trust. But also the threats that lawmakers have been facing. There have been violent threats, bomb threats, swatting incidents against lawmakers who really on both sides of the issue, but it's ever since this has been in the national spotlight. This particular lawmaker pointed out, if we pass this, we normalize those kinds of threats. We say that works, and there's a lot of resistance to giving credence to that.
Kayla Dwyer, Indy Star, State House reporter on C-SPAN's Washington Journal this morning, and President Trump had posted ahead of the vote in the Indiana State Senate, posting on Truth Social, anyone that votes against redistricting and the success of the Republican Party in D.C. will be, I am sure, met with a MAGA primary in the spring. If Republicans will not do what is necessary to save our country, they will eventually lose everything to the Democrats. And the Indiana Senate did vote down the congressional map as written by Republicans. Associated Press writing that senators clashed Thursday over President Donald Trump's use of the National Guard in American cities, with Republicans defending the deployments as necessary to fight lawlessness and Democrats calling it an extraordinary abuse of military power that violates states' rights. The questioning of military officials before the Senate Armed Services Committee was the highest level of scrutiny outside a courtroom of President Trump's use of the National Guard in U.S. cities since the deployments began. That was from AP. U.S. Senator Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat from Michigan, asked one of the witnesses, Pentagon Principal Deputy General Counsel Charles Young, about a potential intersection of National Guard deployment and the 2026 elections.
If you were asked to approve the placement of uniformed military on and around polling locations for a federal election in 2026, what would your legal judgment be of whether those uniforms could do that?
Senator, again, that's a hypothetical situation. There are federal laws that prohibit the stationing of troops at polling places. However, the question would be whether or not the degree to which that would apply in a non-federalized status under Title 32, and it would depend on the status of the personnel and the mission parameters that are being contemplated.
So it's possible that if you were asked, if you said, look, we've got a problem in Chicago, right? We've talked about federal troops in Chicago. We need to put uniformed military surrounding polling locations in downtown Chicago. Are there circumstances in which you would approve that?
Senator, I would say this, is that during COVID, when many poll workers were unavailable, many state and local jurisdictions
But you can understand, I understand during COVID, but you can understand that when there's a trust deficit, right? When the President of the United States says we have to go after the enemy within, and that if he loses an election, it's because it was rigged, his words, that the idea that we'd put uniformed military surrounding polling locations, for you to not understand what that means to the American public, the playbook of authoritarianism that I've seen as a CIA officer play out over and over and over again in other countries, for you not to understand that that sends a shiver down the spine of every American, and should, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that's why there's a trust deficit, is because there are some circumstances in which you would use the military in the middle of our democracy like that. And I continue to believe it's not our uniformed military that have a problem, it's the leaders who are directing them and these missions.
U.S. Senator Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat from Michigan, questioning Pentagon Principal Deputy General Counsel Charles Young at a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing with Defense Department officials looking at President Trump's deployment of National Guard to cities throughout the U.S. USA Today writing that MyPillow founder Mike Lindell, a fierce loyalist of President Donald Trump, officially announced on December 11th that he's running for governor of Minnesota. Lindell posted on his Facebook page, "After prayerful consideration and hearing from so many of you across our great state, I've made the decision to enter the 2026 gubernatorial race. I'm still standing, and I'll stand for you. Let's bring common sense back to Minnesota." The Republican candidate has launched a campaign website, MikeLindellGov.com, and his top objectives include stopping fraud, fixing, quote, failing school systems, stopping, quote, exploding property taxes, and to, quote, send illegal immigrants back. That was from the USA Today article. Mike Lindell did an interview today with podcast host Steve Bannon.
I'll be the most transparent governor this country's ever seen. I got all the media right here. They have my direct line, direct contact. I tell the people, they will know everything that I know, and I will dig in when there's deviations, whether it's fraud or anything else that's nonsensical or problem. It needs to be run like a company. That's what this state needs to be run like, not just politicians running around not getting anything done or doing things that don't help the people. When I wanted to say, when you see deviations and you look at each thing, it's not just being a governor running around saying you're a governor. You're responsible to every single department, everything all the way down. And when you see a problem here, you want to fix the problem and then put stuff in place that it never happens again. And you got to duplicate your successes.
Mike Lindell, founder of MyPillow, creator of Lindell TV, now Republican candidate for Minnesota governor. The current governor, Tim Walz, a Democrat who's running for a third term, writing on X, "We've seen what happens when we elect a con man to the highest office in America. We can't let it happen here in Minnesota." Story from the Hill. The House on Thursday voted to table a resolution to impeach President Donald Trump after Congressman Al Green, Democrat of Texas, forced a vote on the matter, scuttling the snap impeachment push with the help of Democratic leaders voting present rather than aiding Green with the effort. A Republican motion to table the matter easily succeeded 237 to 140 with the help of 47 Democrats voting present and 23 voting in favor of tabling. Green, who has been a leading advocate of impeaching Trump since his first term, used a privilege motion to force House action on the impeachment resolution he filed Wednesday. That was from the Hill, and he did speak on the House floor before the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise to announce that last night I called for the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America, for threatening judges and for calling for the execution of members of Congress. If ever there was a person who ought to be impeached, it's Donald John Trump. Now, there are many people who don't want to see this happen. They don't want to vote for impeachment. Well, there were people who didn't want to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but they marched on. I shall march on. I've been told that this vote will take place sometime after 1:30 today. I assure you I'll be here for that vote. I will also speak on Friday for about 1 hour after about 11 o'clock. I will explain more about it at that time. This president is a reckless, ruthless, lawless person who doesn't deserve the title of President of the United States of America. I yield back.
Congressman Al Green, Democrat from Texas, on the House floor before the House did vote to table or kill his impeachment resolution. The vote 237 to 140, 23 Democrats voting to table, another 47 Democrats voting present, including the Democratic leadership, which put out a joint statement that begins, "Donald Trump's out-of-control behavior continues to put health, safety, and economic well-being of the American people at risk. At the same time, House Republicans have zero interest in holding this corrupt administration accountable." The statement then says that impeachment is a sacred constitutional vehicle designed to hold a corrupt executive accountable for abuse of power, breaking the law, and violating the public trust, and that it requires a detailed investigation and public hearings to build a broad consensus, and that was not done in this case. From Newsweek, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov demanded that the Trump administration provide its reasoning and justification for its seizure of a Venezuelan oil tanker this week, as tensions have soared between the U.S. and the South American nation in recent months. President Trump confirmed Wednesday that the U.S. seized the tanker off the coast of Venezuela, calling it the largest one ever seized, and signaled a sharp escalation in tensions with President Nicolas Maduro's government. Caracas has called the U.S. seizure an act of international piracy. That was from Newsweek. More on this issue at the White House briefing with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
Based on the way that things stand right now, is Operation Southern Spear about drugs or is it about oil?
What I will tell you, Peter, is that the Trump administration is focused on doing many things in the Western Hemisphere. The president has taken a new approach that has not been taken by any administration for quite some time to actually focus on what's going on in our own backyard. And there are two things that are very important to this administration. Number one, stopping the flow of illegal drugs into the United States of America, which we know has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. The president promised on the campaign trail that he would demolish the foreign terrorist organizations and drug cartels around the world, especially right here in our own hemisphere, and you have seen that he is delivering on that promise. With respect to the oil and what happened yesterday, the Department of Justice requested and was approved for a warrant to seize a vessel because it's a sanctioned shadow vessel known for carrying black market sanctioned oil to the IRGC, which you know is a sanctioned entity. So the president is committed to stopping the illegal flow of drugs into our country. He's also fully committed to effectuating this administration's sanction policy, and that's what you saw and the world saw take place yesterday.
And because you said the president is trying to do a lot of things at once, he talks a lot about how he thinks the way to bring down prices for everything would be to bring down the cost of energy. Would he use this seized Venezuelan oil to try to help Americans with affordability here in the United States?
Well, what I can tell you right now, the vessel has been seized, as you know, and the Department of Justice did that in conjunction with the Coast Guard and the Department of War. The vessel is currently undergoing a forfeiture process right now. The United States currently has a full investigative team on the ground on the vessel, and individuals on board the vessel are being interviewed, and any relevant evidence is being seized. With respect to the oil, that's a different issue, as you know, Peter. The vessel will go to a U.S. port, and the United States does intend to seize the oil. However, there is a legal process for the seizure of that oil, and that legal process will be followed.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt taking reporters' questions today in the White House briefing room. Reuters writing the U.S. is preparing to intercept more ships transporting Venezuelan oil following the seizure of a tanker this week as it increases pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. 6 sources familiar with the matter said on Thursday. U.S. Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, was interviewed today on this issue on MS Now.
How concerned are you about this escalation in the region?
Well, I'm really concerned. This is the kind of reckless, lawless adventurism that Donald Trump is engaged in right now, to the cost of billions of dollars to the American taxpayer. This is outrageous. He does not have the ability to declare war on Venezuela or anybody else. That clearly in the Constitution is Congress's. Congress has war powers, and thank God there's a bipartisan war powers resolution that will come to the Senate soon. But in the meantime, you see Donald Trump amping up his activities in this region, breaking the law, and doing things that will have to be viewed and really litigated as whether they're war crimes or not. And so this should be concerning to all Americans, from his own base, who doesn't want this, to all of us who do not want us entangled in more conflicts abroad when we have so many issues here at home as well.
Do you think that war powers resolution is going to end up passing this time?
Well, again, my frustration with Republicans in Congress right now is they practice an advanced form of yoga where they bend over and contort themselves, to bend over backwards to do whatever the president wants. I'm really happy that there are some Republicans more and more speaking up, but I'm not confident necessarily that we have the votes from Republicans to pass this war powers, to really lay plain that what the president is doing is violating the Constitution, that he does not have the power to do it.
Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, on MS Now today. NBC News writing, after escaping her country in secret, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Maria Corina Machado said Thursday that she received help from the U.S. government to leave hiding in Venezuela and collect her award. Machado, 58 years old, credited President Donald Trump's decisive actions in making the Venezuelan regime weaker than ever. Her latest show of support for the White House as it builds military pressure against Caracas. That was from NBC News. Here is part of the news conference with the Nobel laureate in Oslo, Norway.
I believe every country has the right to defend themselves. In our case, I believe that President Trump's actions have been decisive to reach the point where we are right now, in which the regime is weaker than ever, because the regime previously thought that they could do anything anything. They felt they had absolute impunity. They could torture, they could disappear, they could sexually assault young women, and absolutely nothing was going to happen. The cost was zero. Now they start to understand that this is serious and the world is really watching.
Maria Corina Machado, Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, at a news conference in Oslo. And finally, on C-SPAN Radio's Washington Today, from Associated Press, the architects of AI were named Times Person of the Year Thursday, with the magazine citing 2025 as when the potential of artificial intelligence roared into view with no turning back. They wrote in a social media post, for delivering the age of thinking machines, for wowing and worrying humanity, for transforming the present and transcending the possible. The architects of AI are Times 2025 Person of the Year. Reporting from AP, Sam Jacobs, the Time editor-in-chief, was on NBC's Today Show this morning.
Today we are proud to announce the 99th Person of the Year from Time. And the Person of the Year for 2025, the architects of AI. This was the year where we feel like the people who were designing, imagining, and building artificial intelligence stopped debating about how to create this technology and started racing to deploy it. And there are enormous consequences for society.
I mean, let's talk about some of the contents of the article I just said to you. I thought it was pretty fascinating, because you didn't just talk to the architects, you talked to the people who are going to be directly impacted by artificial intelligence as well. What did they say? What did they tell you about AI, and what did the architects that you talked to, what did they have to say?
The people building this technology are incredibly enthusiastic for the potential. Someone like Jensen Huang at NVIDIA is saying that the global GDP, which currently caps out at about $100 trillion, could be $500 trillion. But they also have warnings for us about what this means. The CEO of Anthropic says maybe 1 out of 5 people will be unemployed because of artificial intelligence in the next 1 to 5 years.
I mean, it's so interesting, because you hear everything from AI could help us find answers, it could eradicate diseases, change life for the better. And then there are people, smart people who say it has the potential to literally destroy humankind.
AI seems to be the answer for everything in 2025. You think about a product like ChatGPT, 800 million people are using it. Think about something like what President Trump said earlier this year: if something bad happens, blame AI.
Time editor-in-chief Sam Jacobs on NBC's Today Show this morning. And one of the cover images of the Time Person of the Year issue shows what resembles the famous lunch atop a skyscraper photograph from the 1930s, with 8 technology company leaders sitting on the beam. Wall Street today, the Dow up 646, NASDAQ down 60, S&P up 14. Thanks for listening to Washington Today, and if you enjoy C-SPAN programming, there's now another way to get it. Starting today, C-SPAN is on Hulu Plus Live TV. That's all 3 C-SPAN TV channels, C-SPAN, C-SPAN 2, and C-SPAN 3 for current and new subscribers of Hulu Plus Live TV. Find out more at hulu.com/live TV. And hope you have a very good night.